I'm Julia Finkel. I'm a pediatric anesthesiologist, pain researcher, and founder of AlgometRX, a spin-out out of Children's National in DC that's focused on bringing out objectivity and precision to pain management. So the overarching problem that we're addressing is that of pain assessment. So as you can see on the right, pain is typically assessed using these subjective pain scales on a scale of 1 to 10 or a series of happy faces. These scales tend to just measure the intensity of the pain. They do nothing to discriminate between the different types of pain or indicate what intervention might be best. And even more problematic, the smallest pediatric patients are unable to even communicate the needed things that are using these subjective scales. The pain market itself is colossal. It's over a $635 billion market. We are going to begin by addressing a very discrete initial market in the pediatric space, which is the pediatric cancer-related pain market. So our solution is the AlgometRX nociometer. It allows us to objectively detect and measure pain, characterize the pain type, evaluate the treatment, determine what the treatment should be, and then monitor both the pain and the treatment over time. On the left panel, you can see this is a image of our prototype, but there's a neurostimulator, electrodes, which will be disposables in the commercial form, a handheld pupillometer, and what will be involved there is a lot of cloud-based storage and manipulation. So the science that powers our technology leverages a discovery we had, which is that a non-painful neuroselective electrical stimulus will activate the pain pathways and cause a pupillary dilation. And so you see here we have our neurostimulator, which emits a non-painful neuroselective electrical stimulus that activates one of the 3 sensory nerve fiber types. Those signals go to the spinal cord and then to the brain, and to various areas, project to the areas of the brain that mediate pain sensation. And they also happen to evoke pupillary dilations. And it's those pupillary dilations that we measure for each of the sensory nerve fiber types. And in doing that, we're able to determine, one, that there's pain, the type of pain, whether it's neuropathic pain or normal nociceptive pain, as well as the intensity of that pain experience. So we don't deny anyone's experience of pain, but we are now able to define the various elements that come to bear on their perception. So our competition is the current standard of care that I just highlighted. Again, it does, it is actually acknowledged as the upstream driver of the opioid epidemic. Because it confuses the different things that come to bear in our experience of pain. Other technologies that are currently being explored are not easily implemented as standard of care. They're mostly relegated to experimental or research paradigms. And those that are being looked at to be commercialized cannot distinguish between the various pain types. So the market opportunity that we're currently most immediately addressing is that of the cancer pain, pediatric cancer pain in particular. There's 175 pediatric cancer centers in the US, over 2,200 adult cancer treatment centers, and over 20,000 oncologists. The AlgometRX team is composed of expertise in medicine, pharmacology, engineering, business, and we have a first-rate advisory board, including that the regulatory and reimbursement. We've had a number of significant milestones. On the funding side, we had an initial seed round of $2.5 million that was used to develop the prototype and develop the initial proof of concept data. We have NIH funding in the form of SBIRs and FDA funding. We've also had several successes in competitions, and so we just became a JLabs company. We've been in several accelerators, and most recently, of course, Innovate Children's Health, we won. Additionally, we won a FDA Innovation Challenge, which gives us an early access pathway and potential for breakthrough technology status designation. We have a very robust patent profile. We have 5 utility patents filed, 3 of which have issued. There's another one going in, and all the international patents are starting to issue now. We are currently seeking another $5 million seed round. That's going to go to development of the commercial platform. and then to fund the initial pediatric clinical trial, where we're anticipating a clearance via the 510(k) de novo pathway for a Class 2 device. Shortly after that, we would follow on with the adult trial. Our business model basically is composed of device sales and a couple of recurring revenue streams, including the disposables, which would be the electrodes, and software as a service sales, which is all of the cloud-based storage and manipulations. Our financial projections follow that business plan, and that currently our expenses revolve around the device development and the clinical trials. Following our anticipated initial clearance, we'll have a spike in revenues reflecting that clearance. And I'll stop there and take questions.
Thank you, Julia. Great presentation. Are there any questions for Julia?
Yes, this is Charlie Nahabidian. I put it in the chat box, but I'll ask it. And that is this a device something that can be patient administered by themselves with some remote guidance from a physician or nurse practitioner?
I would say ultimately, yes. It's not the intended purpose just yet. And also there are so many different applications. So depending on, so just for pharmacotherapy, the answer would be yes. If we were doing a rather sophisticated pain diagnostic, probably not, because it involves testing different areas of the body. The patient always serves as their own control, that kind of thing. And so there's a fair amount of nuance and sophistication that's needed for some of the diagnostic work. But just to look at, for instance, dose response, to understand that, for instance, a particular drug needs to be escalated or not, that could be done in a home setting. So it really depends on the application.
Hey, Julie, this is Paula. How are you doing? Great job. Just curious about something. Obviously, perception of pain is incredibly relative. Are you finding that that's the case here too, in terms of pupil reaction?
Right. Well, what we're measuring is the actual physiologic processing of a painful stimulus or your pain in an individual. So our perception is colored by so many different things. There's, emotional processing and things like that that occur, that for you and I, a pain score of 7, it means something entirely different potentially. Whereas what we're measuring is what the pain nerves are transmitting to the brain. And so it's a physiologic response that we're measuring. And so, as I said, we're not negating anyone's perception of pain, but we are defining what's happening there. So is this really, it's all pain mediated, is their sensation? Or, people get very anxious if they know that they're about to have pain or they're currently experiencing pain, and what's the implication of that? And so their perception is augmented if that's the case. Similarly, if you're sad, pain is augmented. If you're happy, you can get through a lot of bad things. And so that doesn't mean that the actual physiologic, or what we call nociceptive processing, is diminished or enhanced. We're measuring exactly that physiologic processing. All the rest are the things that color your perception. And so, if anxiety is the biggest, is one of the modifiers, that's what needs to be addressed. And so basically we're really defining those various elements that come to bear on someone's perception. And most notably, that physiologic piece is what we use, all these drugs we use to mitigate.
So what's the real value of having this physiologic response measurement versus the perceptual? Because that's really, is it to drive?
Well, it allows for a personalized approach to treating pain. It mitigates our overuse of opioids. Opioids aren't appropriate in many different pain conditions, and yet it's used as a Band-Aid for anything called pain, which is why there's an opioid crisis. And so it allows for a very mechanistic approach to treating pain.
Dr. Finkel, do you see, by the way, great presentation. Do you see a future of this being integrated across general telemetry? And if so, what's the timeline?
Definitely, absolutely. I see this as another module in the bank of monitors, basically, physiologic monitors, just as you would never give an antihypertensive to someone with hypertension without measuring their blood pressure. So here you wouldn't give an analgesic to someone without understanding. It's a little more complex in that you're defining the actual nociceptive profile or their pain profile, but there's an intervention, we measure it, right? So absolutely. And I could see how it could easily be integrated, but I think we need this initial clearance and user adoption and that kind of thing. It really is a paradigm change. And so I think, third-party payers are very interested in, I see them as a driver in user adoption here, because it really does help define and guide what agents are being used, basically non-opioid agents, in that instance.
Dr. Finkel, this is Anand from Singapore. I have two questions for you. One is what kind of approvals are you looking for, and what are the timelines for the approvals before you can start commercializing a product like this? The second question is, have you thought about building a digital therapeutic app around this? Thank you.
So for our first approval, it's a class 2 device, and it's a 510(k) de novo pathway, and that's in 2024 is when would be the late end of what we're when we're expecting that approval. In terms of digital apps, this again, I think all of this is uploaded into the EHR. It's a handheld device. There are peripherals and that kind of thing. And so given that it's digital information, it's easily adapted to these things, but the processing, it depends again on what questions and what the diagnostic inquiry is. If it's simply just looking at a pharmacodynamic impact versus looking at different, a pain diagnosis, it requires a certain amount of sophistication. So one is akin to a blood pressure, the other is akin to getting an EKG and reading that. The app would be basically a point of care, assessment tool or application in that instance.
Wouldn't
Thank
that
you. Yeah,
boost, sorry, just to follow up on that, wouldn't that boost the confidence of a user if he can see something on his mobile phone, the result or the outcome of the perception value or the actual value of the pain?
It is on the device, so I'm not sure. So I'm not sure that there's a need for additional. You still need the device, right? You have to make the query. You need the neurostimulator. So it doesn't. I don't see necessarily the need for a separate application. You can download things to the patient's chart. You could download it to your phone ostensibly, but it's the same information. So all that information's there and readily available. The other thing is this is a physiologic measure that's new, right? So you have to be able to interpret it, and so much of what we've done are develop these algorithms that basically show, synthesize all of this data that we've generated in an individual into a single index. And so, if an index of greater than 1 using a particular testing paradigm would indicate a normal type of nociceptive pain, like what's had after surgery, versus, an index less than 0.1 and smaller than that, would indicate neuropathic type pain as like a diabetic neuropathy. Those
Julia?
types of I'm sorry.
No. I think we're going to have to move on, but
Sure.
There are some questions in the chat box. It would be great if you could put your information, your contact details. I mean, they're on the screen if there's another way you want people to contact you, but I think if you put it in the chat box for everybody, you're going to get a flood of questions.
Sure. Thank you.
And we also have the notes from this too, so we'll share that with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.